How much credibility should we be giving reports that Aramco is looking to undertake a new listing? We know that talk about this topic has been out there for a while, but would it make sense in your view?
Well, good morning, Dan. I think if Aramco decides to do that, they will more or less come out officially right through the government in Riyadh. So I haven't heard anything official, but this is the right time if they were to do that. The oil markets look good for quite a while, looking at maybe 10, 15 years at least. So if they decided to launch more shares, this would be the perfect time.
Absolutely, and it's interesting because Aramco has also raised oil pricing for customers in Asia. Brent also moving above $93 a barrel in recent days. So we are looking at an incredible recovery for the oil markets. Do you think that that's a factor that Aramco could tap into when it comes to attempting to attract new capital?
The markets are doing very well, but they're doing very well for fundamental reasons. There is a strong demand for energy. The global recovery is taking a hold. There is a shortage of supply in many areas of the world. So the markets are doing very well just because this is the nature of the global economy. It's growing at a fast rate. It's recovering very quickly. The Far East, by the way, far more aggressively than Europe or the US. So, and there is a strong interest in a reliable, secure, affordable source of energy across the world. Oil is it. Yes, gas is great too. It's very clean. Alternatives, yes, they will come along in due course. But right now, immediate requirement for energy, the best source is oil. And it doesn't need pipelines. It doesn't need LNG terminals.
Sadad, it's Hadley out in Abu Dhabi. I just want to quickly ask you, the last time I was out visiting you guys at Aramco was back during the attacks at Abqaiq a few years ago. Now, we have seen an uptick of attacks from the Houthis right here in Abu Dhabi. I just want to get a sense from you about how challenging you see this going forward, because there still is a huge element of geopolitical risk, and it seems as if those Iran talks aren't going anywhere, at least no time soon.
Well, Hadley, as you say, we had those attacks, but we've had wars in the region. We've had wars that went on for years. We've had attacks on tankers. We've had mines floating in the Gulf. And Aramco's been a steady producer in spite of all of those contingencies. Saudi Arabia's built pipelines across the kingdom to export from the Red Sea. So, yeah, they're nuisances, but they don't disrupt the operations. We hope that it gets resolved soon. I mean, it's tragic what's happening in Yemen, but the Houthis just seem to be funded by powers abroad, and they don't seem to have a realization that all they're doing is destroying Yemen. So we hope it gets resolved, but it's not disrupting our operations.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, when the initial IPO of Aramco was discussed, obviously we were talking about various cities where you could do this. You could talk about New York. We were talking about Asia as well. One of the big pushbacks, I guess, and you're very familiar with the Aramco mine meld here, was that could open up the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to legal action, particularly if they were to list in New York. How big do you think is that fear weighing with the company at this point?
I think these decisions are actually made in Riyadh, in the ministry itself, and they're the champions of the modernization and opening up of the company. They will be very well advised. They have a lot of legal expertise available to them, and I'm sure they're not going to do anything rash. They will pick the best markets, and they will put in place the contingencies needed to protect the shares. This is the real world, and we are playing with the big players in the energy world. So we'll take whatever it takes, I'm sure. But the decisions are made in Riyadh.
And so, Dad, what do you think the institutional investor appetite is looking like right now for big oil? It seems like a number of these big investors are increasingly focused on ESG credentials. There's no question that Aramco is an investable business. The Saudi Arabia story is very appealing, but what type of capital could they actually be attracting in this environment, given the huge shift that we've seen in investor sentiment? And could an Aramco listing actually be quite a hard sell?
Well, Dan, you're asking a very important question. I think we have to get away from the armchair economics, that talk in generalities, and look at the energy world and the economy of the world needing to grow and in the light of day. Sources of reliable, extensive volumes of oil are limited. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, for sure. Russia, too, by the way. Russia plays a very important role across the world. So investors who are looking at the long term and thinking about the global economy needing to grow, it's over the next 30 years, by now in 2050, it almost triples. That is going to require a lot of energy, and it's got to be reliable energy. Now, wind, solar, yes, they're very good. Try solar in England. It doesn't quite work. So I think investors are getting clever. They're seeing through the realities. Everybody's energy solution put together is the only solution. It's not one or the other. It's all of them.
It's a good point. And Sadad, just before we let you go, I also wanted to tap into your experience in the markets here. At the moment, we have prices at a 2014 high. We mentioned earlier that Brent is now around 93 US dollars a barrel. Do you think this oil price rally has legs, or is it looking a little overdone at this point? Because at the same time, policymakers, particularly within OPEC, appear to be sitting on the sidelines. There doesn't really seem to be much of an appetite internally to cool hot prices right now. Where do you think this is going?
We've been at these kind of prices many years, often. It takes about $80 to sustain oil production. Now, all the talk that we used to hear about breaking even at $35 and $40, that didn't generate any free cash. So you couldn't reinvest. The prices we're looking at now are what's required to sustain this kind of operation. We're talking about over 100 million barrels a day. It's not a small thing. I think we're going to be here for a while. The economy of Asia is swelling very fast. The refineries that run across the world are still about 2-3 million barrels below their capacity, and they will need more oil going into the latter part of this year. So I think we're going to see these prices for a while. I would say 4 or 5 years is not a unusual extension to this plateau.